A Vancouver icon is being honored today with a Google Doodle. That's the picture that you see when you open Google's search page. Jim Wong-Chu was a writer, a community organizer, and amateur historian. He nurtured and promoted many well-known Asian Canadian writers. Here he is in 1997 speaking to the CBC about early Chinese immigration to Canada.
The racial tones of it was obvious because it was a community that was restricted. It had nowhere to go. And literally, if it was possible for the people of those days, they would like to push us right out to sea.
Jim passed away in 2017. And for more about Jim and his legacy, we have reached Alan Cho. Alan is Executive Director of the Asian Canadian Writers Workshop, which Jim co-founded in the mid-90s. Alan, hello.
Hi, Gloria. Nice to talk to you.
Yes, well, thank you so much for making yourself available. How did you learn that Jim was today's Google Doodle?
Well, we've known for a while. Google had come to the Asian Canadian Writers Workshop, and they were interested in us helping them have a bit of a profile of Jim. So they have this Google Doodle project, and they wanted to have Jim to celebrate his birthday, which is today, January 28th. So, yeah.
Oh, every time I did a Google search today, I had a little bit of a smile. What would you say this doodle captures about Jim?
I think it really captures Chinatown. I mean, you look at that beautiful image that was created by an artist, San Francisco-based artist, David Liu, and you can sort of see the image of Chinatown, the neon lights. You can see sort of the Chinatown landscape of a certain period, and you see the Millennium Gates there. And you see a picture of a dragon there, but also it's sort of this hybrid with the Aquarius, which is sort of the horoscope of Jim as well. So in many ways it captures the man, and you sort of see him sort of leaning against the wall there, which is a very Jim Wong-Chu pose.
I like that. People are going to have to go online and check that out for themselves. Well, it is great to see him there, with Chinatown in the backdrop. And that's where he took photographs of the community in the 70s and 80s. A lot of those were eventually featured in the Vancouver Sun. Well, how would you describe Jim's approach to featuring people in the community?
His type of art was very interesting, very different, I think, than many other photographers. His style was that he would talk to the people that he would photograph. He said he wasn't interested in having them as just a shot, as part of the landscape. He wanted to know their stories. So he would interview the people that he would photograph and ask for their permission. And beyond that, he would strike up a conversation and talk to them. Where do you come from? Why are you here? About their life stories. And I think that was really very much his ideals as a photographer, but also poet and a writer as well, and historian. It was just so interested and curious about people. And certainly a lot of the work that he's done is really about anti-racism as well, and challenges and struggles that he faced growing up. And that's why he always centered on Chinatown, because it marked a space that was very special to him, but it was also a space that had a lot of struggles and challenges throughout the century of history of Chinatown in Vancouver and in Canada.
Well, what drove him? I mean, Jim's day job was delivering mail for Canada Post, right? But he spent his spare time organizing Asian Canadian writers and other communities.
Yeah, I think that's why Google's interested in Jim. And when they came to us and said, we want to learn a little bit more about Jim and his stories, really, his real interest and curiosity was also based on his growing up in Canada without a voice. He came here as a paper son. He couldn't even have his own name on his passport, so he had to borrow an identity. And that was sort of the time period that he had come up and lived and endured. And, a lot of the anti-Asian racism, I think this is also a really good symbolic of the time that we're in right now. Very sadly, a lot of anti-Asian racism and sentiment. And that was sort of what Jim, his work was dedicated to, it was not only just educating us through words, but also through art as well. So that's why I think, working as his day job, but his passion was really about documenting these histories and really showing and promoting artist through, his brainchild, Rice Paper Magazine, and later on the Literasian Festival.
Well, and his goal really was that Asian Canadians would simply be accepted as Canadians, right?
Yeah, he says, in a big scheme of things, his main goal, he said, was to take the Asian out of Canadian. It's always been Asians in Canada. He says, why do we need that? But until we get to that point, we have to promote those voices that are often, left voiceless or not given a chance to get published based on the stories that they write that are not accepted by the so-called mainstream or just not interested by mainstream publishers. So from that perspective, I think he was very successful in just looking for the next voice through writing that he could give some tips and pointers and a bit of mentorship for. So there's a generation of writers of Canadians of Asian descent that have gone on to fabulous and remarkable careers, and there's always been some homage to Jim because he was the one that either found them or before they were famous or had a career in writing, he gave them a spark of interest or inspiration.
No, there's something that's on our radar right now, this American film, Minari. It's been categorized as a foreign language film because the dialogue is mostly in Korean. It's an American film, but it's called foreign language. What do you think Jim would have made of that?
I think it speaks to a lot of what he's been doing or have done in Rice Paper Magazine is really having these types of issues and bring them out into the forefront. And Minari is a really good example. It's one of many throughout the years of, there's a certain foreignness of Asian arts and culture in Canada or North America or in English literature in general. Whenever we have an event, Asian Canadian literature, the question sometimes pops up, it's like, oh, is it written in English? So there's this question of like, just because you're Asian in Canada, you don't write in English. And so it's really to dispel the myth, a lot of the work that Jim has done and bring to the forefront. And even if you're successful as an Asian Canadian writer, sometimes you are seen as not part of the mainstream. You're still seen as Asian and not quite Canadian enough. And I think Minari is a really great example. It's a successful film in North America, but still regarded as foreign. Somehow doesn't belong here.
Okay. Alan, thank you so much for shedding some light on the legacy of Jim Wong-Chu. And for people listening, just do a Google search and you'll see his image there. Alan, thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much.
That is Alan Cho. He is Executive Director of the Asian Canadian Writers Workshop.